We're rolling. All right, man. What's up, everybody? Here we are in Tribeca at the new home of Police Off the Cuff. I'm here. My name is Mark DeMeo, and I'm with my partner in law enforcement, Bill Cannon. What's up, buddy?
Yo, we got Ed Mullins on, man. I feel like I'm almost paisan with him, you know? There's some Irish paisan shit, too.
Is that a thing? Irish paisan?
You're out.
All right. Well,
it's new. It's Irish old paisan.
let's give Ed a better introduction than that. Listen, the reason why we're here down in Tribeca is basically because of you, Ed. You're a visionary as far as I'm concerned. You've done a lot of things. In case you don't know who we're talking about, this is Ed Mullins right here, and he is the president of the Sergeants Benevolent Association. And he's a visionary. He's done a lot of amazing things with the SBA. He's going to tell you some of the stuff that he's done and some of the stuff that's coming up. But he was also interested in what we were doing with this podcast here, and he had us come in for a meeting. And I guess you could say the rest is history. Now we're doing it down here. What's up, Ed?
How are you? I'm happy to be here. I finally get to see what's going on for real.
Hey, now you're trapped in between the two of us.
I know. Talk about a sandwich.
You know, I was a sergeant, as you guys know, for 22 years.
Really?
I know.
And Ed was, I think you remember me. I was the Manhattan North Detective Delegate. And so I went through quite a few SBA presidents, right? Well, at least three, right? My tenure.
Told, Bernie.
Yeah, it was a few, and you know something, unions on the NYPD, a lot of times the president or the board guys are more self-serving, and Ed, I would say, is probably the most honest, and his heart's in the right place. He's really concerned for the sergeants and for the union, and he's done great things with this union. And I remember, I think it was in 2008, a group from Brooklyn tried to challenge him. And one of the things they said,
needless to say, they're not around anymore.
No, but they were going to hire. They were going to hire the drug company that he just fired. That he found out stole $500,000 for the SBA. That basically killed the whole campaign.
Going back to business as usual.
That was great.
You know, this thing becoming a union delegate of obviously originally, and then becoming the president. That's. Is that something that you always had in you? Were you like, the president of the class in the school as a kid?
Furthest thing from my thought process. I just always got involved when things weren't right. And I became a PBA delegate in 1984.
Oh, so you were a PBA delegate before you got promoted?
Yes, I had 2 years on.
What year did you come on the job?
1982.
Wow.
And
That's a long time ago.
How old were you?
20. So I went to the 13th precinct. The lounge was a mess. The showers were a mess. And I was like,
right off the bat?
Yeah, it was terrible.
As a 20-year-old? See, I just asked you that question. You said, no, I just want things are right. Things are never right. Nowhere. You always got to fix it.
I fix it.
He was the Jimmy Hoffa.
So you're 20 years... Wait a minute.
Without the hole in the head.
You're 20 years old. I'm not getting the mic. You're 20 years old, and you get to the command. What was your first command?
13th precinct.
So you walk in there, and you weren't happy with the shower room and the locker room at all?
Nah, it was disgusting.
Why was the shower your first concern?
Well,
long hours, overtime.
Let's start off with the command. The lounge was probably gross.
The lounge was gross. It had furniture that looked like it was thrown to the sidewalk.
It was. That's where they get it.
Centerfolds all over the ceiling, and there was about 6, 7 female police officers who couldn't eat in the lounge, based on the obscenities that were hanging on the walls. And it was a great place to work, good cops, but the facilities were just outdated and just not adequate for what should be for a police station. So,
but it's amazing that you're a rookie, right? Yeah. That's what you're saying, that as soon as you walked in, but you kept your mouth shut, obviously, in the beginning a little bit, right?
Just a little bit, not much, just a little bit.
And how did you go about
I ran for delegate. There was an opening for delegate.
Right off the bat?
And it was about 2 years.
Don't you need a couple of years to become a delegate?
I had 2 years in, and I ran for delegate.
And they say, kid, wait a little longer, kid.
Yeah, well, I ran against other people and won.
And you weren't intimidated at all?
No.
Because as a delegate, you're going to have to, wake up in the middle of the night and drive to a command to represent somebody you don't even know.
I didn't mind doing it.
On about serious stuff, but you didn't even know that much about the job yet.
I read, I learn, I talk to other
That's
people.
amazing.
And I just got involved, and I stayed delegate there for about 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you were a cop for 10 years before you made boss?
No, I became a detective. And,
okay.
PA too, you went...
DEA
when you were in
union or no?
I was in the DEA.
But did you also?
No,
Delegate
I had a good delegate in the 13th. I got made detective out of the 13th. Jim Schrei was the delegate. Tom Scotto was the union president.
How did you make detective
was
out of RIP?
Out of RIP, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Did you have a pinky ring back then?
No, Irish guy. Was out.
That's true, right? If you're Irish,
Still no
you can't,
rings,
you can't
don't
get
wear
a
rings.
you can't
Were you
get
a big collar guy?
In anti-crime, I made a lot of collars. The squad was mostly case collars. But
So you would walk in the command, check out the locker room, make sure everything's squared away, people putting away their stuff, nobody's leaving
it
stuff
just-
in the fridge too
it
long, and
just-
then you go outside and collar people.
make you overtime. Things weren't right, and things were outdated. And
No, it's great to be like that because I'm the type of guy I just complain. I just walk in and this place is fucked up. Why doesn't anybody do anything?
I change everything. I go in
and
change
cops,
it.
cops love to complain.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And the
good at
biggest
it.
complainers don't
It's
do
like
shit,
99
right?
complainers and there's one Ed.
That's right. That's true. This job sucks.
Everybody must.
No, it's a good job. It's a
How much time you got on the job?
But once
16
things
months,
things start getting fixed around there, and the locker rooms starts becoming habitable. I'll tell you how bad. Most people don't even have an idea of how disgusting a command can be. The lounge where you eat. I used to work in the Warren Squad. It was on 98th Street and 3rd Avenue, Manhattan Warren Squad. And before you went in there to the lounge to eat, you'd have to. There was a bat on the side of the door, and you'd hit the wall twice and turn the lights on and off.
Get rid
And
of
so
rats.
this way, the rats, you could see them exiting the room, and there was a pipe against the wall. You could see them running on the wall back into their hole, and they disappeared. And you go inside, and you'd have your lunch, and then there was a recliner there, and you'd take a nap too.
Was that real
With the
rats
lights
or
off.
metaphorically rats? Cops?
No, rats, real big rats,
Real
like
big
this
rats.
big. Yeah, man, that's the way.
A lot of the precincts are like that.
Yeah, I would say most of them.
Yeah, most. And the city knows it. The facilities are outdated, and we don't fix them.
You know, I used to love up in where I worked in the 2-4 a bunch of years. They used to turn the heat off on the weekends. Just turn it off.
Well, they do that in the
They give a
academy
shit.
now.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I like that we don't put mounted out when it gets below a certain temperature, but cops stay out there freezing all day.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Think about it. Right?
Take care of those horses.
Who's out there?
15 degrees.
You know
the
what they
horses
say,
gotta
right? A
stay
good cop
inside.
never gets cold, hungry, or wet.
Yeah.
You
Try
can
saying
take that
at
any
Times
way you
Square.
want.
But a horse can.
How about like what one of the tricks the sergeant used to do, because when they raise it, when you were supposedly walking a foot post in the middle of the winter and it's freezing out, a lot of times if you're a smart cop, you'll know where to go to get out of the cold for a few minutes,
Rightfully
maybe a
so.
couple hours, and the sergeant, when he comes over to give you a scratch, which is right in your memo book that he witnessed you on this corner there, a lot of times they used to touch your shield.
See if it's cold.
To see if it was cold, to make sure that you were out there.
But a smart sergeant wouldn't touch your shield. He'd leave it at that.
That's true.
Not unless they were looking to find some bad
that's
news.
Unless you wanted
gender.
to find it. Yeah, now it would be gender.
Oh, forget it. Forget
Couldn't
about
do it.
There's no way.
So you're a delegate now, and then you become a detective. You leave that a little bit,
Right.
until you become a boss. And once you become a sergeant, how long did it take for you to want to become a delegate as a sergeant?
About 6 months.
Uh-huh.
The
What was it that annoyed you about the sergeants right off the bat that you wanted to fix up?
well, the delegate that was in the command wasn't doing anything.
Uh-huh. What is actually your job as a delegate?
Basically, to look out for the well-being of the people you represent, and that varies from they could have a family tragedy at home to
People have to vote for you.
They do, but you oversee representation for them. You oversee something that may be happening in their personal life they may need help with.
So something happens at their situation at work that is not right, maybe against what they believe is the union rules, and they'll contact the delegate, or if they get jammed up, and by jammed up in some type of trouble,
Right.
you might have to go there and represent
You
them.
represent them. They could be involved in an off-duty incident. They could be involved in a shooting. They could be involved in just a dispute with a precinct captain who sees things one way, not necessarily the right way, and the next thing they invoke discipline. You act as their representative.
So when you show up at one of these incidents where the cop messed up, and then you're hearing what happened, you're like, wow, this guy really fucked up. Like, what do you do then?
Well, if the guy really made bad decisions.
You're like a lawyer in a way.
Well, to some degree, without privilege. But if he really made bad decisions, you explain why they were bad decisions, and you try to get the other side to see that maybe he didn't make the right decision based on bad information. If he was just callous in his decision making, then you try to soften the blow as much as you can. You try to add a human element to it, not that it's always black and white.
Do you really go out of your way, or you feel like a obligation to when you know somebody did something fucked up and you're just like, no, fuck this guy?
No, I generally go out of my way, but if a person really did screw up, the issue is much deeper. It's much deeper in the person himself, and then I would try to do is get them to understand and teach them, or spend the time, following up with them to make things better in their life. So you made bad decisions. This is your situation, but if you get a little guidance, somebody to talk to, sometimes you try to get them right back on track.
Sometimes the public doesn't realize also is that, they can immediately say when a cop does something wrong, oh, that's a bad cop. No, he was put in a horrendous situation, and he reacted to the situation. And sometimes he may have made the wrong decision because he has to make a split-second decision. That doesn't make him a bad cop.
That's an excellent point, Billy. What happens many, many times is that, the story that takes place becomes the narrative for everything that occurred. But it's not necessarily factual. Cop fires shot, but that's the headline. But they don't say why he fired the shot in detail. They don't say that the person that shot was fired at, was wanted for X number of felonies and had a gun as he was fleeing the area.
Right.
They leave a lot of that out, and people don't read into that. They go, oh, there's another cop firing his gun. So the narrative gets changed, and that's where we act as the advocate for, wait a minute, let's tell the truth.
Right.
We just went through that with Kizzy Adonis in the Gardner case. Absolutely did nothing wrong.
Tell us about that case. So for the
Gardner case.
The chokehold case in Staten Island.
Okay.
We had a female African-American sergeant who was assigned 26 days into the command. She's brand new. She wasn't even...
She's a brand new sergeant?
Brand new sergeant, but she
gets promoted.
Just got promoted 26 days earlier. Assigned to the borough, that night of the incident to go to the borough. Hears what's taking place over the radio and does what you should want your sergeants to do. She hears calls coming over the radio. She goes in a different direction to see what's happening. She gets there as everything is basically almost over. And Bratton at the time, Commissioner Bratton, charged her with failure to supervise. So, you put the blame on her, female African-American, 26-day in rank sergeant, you put the blame on her. And that was not the factual story of what occurred. That was not what happened. No one ever said that she was assigned someplace else. No one, talked about in any of the media how someone else was in charge of covering patrol, but they left her conveniently, as the patrol sergeant.
Why is that?
Because it's part of the club. If they have someone to blame, so let's lay it on the new sergeant, and we'll lay it on the female African-American sergeant because it fit a better narrative for the news media. Instead of saying, wait a second, anti-crime, have you worked anti-crime? You ever work anti-crime?
6.5 years I was
Okay, but the sergeant in anti-crime is not supposed to cover patrol and anti-crime. But somebody made the decision to do that and put her out there as the patrol sergeant, even though she wasn't. But what about the guy that made that choice to put the anti-crime sergeant out? We let that go, which is probably the precinct commander. Ironically, all of these people have been promoted since. No one talks about why the job...
Ed, let me just stop you for 1 second. There was another incident that Bratton did something very similar to that, and I think it was the Asian cop that killed the guy in the stairwell.
Gurley.
And he suspended a female cop in the academy that trained him. I was like, what a stretch is that?
Yes.
You need some meat for the press, so you're going to suspend her because she didn't train him properly?
If people really look at Bratton, what you will see is P.T. Barnum. That's what you will see. You will see a guy who sells a product, and, he's selling it under the banner, Bill Bratton, and how he changed crime in New York City in the 90s. Under the direction of Giuliani, but under the brilliance of Jack Maple. Jack Maple was the Deputy Commissioner of Crime Strategies, who was the think tank.
And there was some other superstars.
There were superstars. Anamone was a superstar. Timoney, a brilliant guy.
Yes.
So you can give Bratton credit for picking these people. But at the end of the day, he was sitting in the lanes, and that was his demise with the mayor, when you think about it, right? He's out there selling himself, doing these things. Comes back a second time. But let's reverse it. Let's go to the first time when he's here about broken windows and enforcing all these little policies, because it's what you do to fight crime. He comes back on the Mayor de Blasio. Yeah, we can reduce crime without those policies. But we now have, as a result of that, federal courts monitoring the NYPD over stop and frisk, which will stem from broken windows policy.
You know, I always like to call that stop, question, and frisk.
You're right.
Because
stop, question,
I don't
and
like
frisk.
that the media leaves out.
And
the
there's
question,
another
the
point of the
question part
narrative.
you know? And you know, it's catching on to everyone because the question is 33% of stop, question, and frisk. You know.
Correct. And there's a whole process to that.
Right. Exactly.
But
and
in
you
the
need
midst of
reasonable
this,
suspicion to
get
that.
there.
Yes.
You got to take people through it. That's one of the things we should always try to teach people about what's really involved in that. But, you know, Bratton's reversed his position from where he was in the 90s.
Ironically, so did Bloomberg now. Everybody was riding high on that crime
What's
stat.
the common denominator to that, though? Bratton reverses it. Why? He wants to be police commissioner de Blasio. Bloomberg reverses it now. Why? Because he wants to be president.
Right,
so does anybody want to tell the truth to the people of the city? That's the question.
It was working, and they all wrote it. And, you know, and they sucked every bit they could out of broken windows out of it, stop, question, frisk when it was convenient for them. And now the tide has turned, and people don't want to hear those words anymore. And
but
they forget.
Mark,
they forget.
you know something, though? Someone put something very, sometimes there's something very pertinent once in a while on Facebook. Someone said they should let the hunters hunt and let the rest of the guys that don't normally stop people just do what they normally do and not make stop, question, and frisk a numbers game. You know, that was utilized mostly by aggressive street cops and anti-crime.
Well, it
was abused.
My theory is it was to collect data.
Stop, question, and frisk is in Mark's on it is that the stop, question, and frisk was implemented for the purpose of overzealous commanders looking to be promoted, going into CompStat, and being questioned as to what happened in your command. Why are we having all of these shootings? What are you doing about it? Well, I stopped 300 people last week.
Exactly.
We went from stop, question, and frisk of individuals under Terry versus Ohio and building up to what you were just describing too. Everybody put their hands on a wall. So we had 10 people with their hands on a wall. One guy had a bag of pot, one guy had something else, one guy had a warrant. If we got that many, that's not the design of stop, question, and frisk. And as a result of CompStat, they got rolled into all of this and people wanted to get promoted. We ended up with a big negative on the NYPD.
Big bag of shit.
It was like 5 a month at one point. They wanted 5 250s.
But you can't put a quota on stop, question, and frisk.
They wanted it from units that weren't out there doing.
But they shouldn't want it from anybody.
But that's the way
you should be required that if you stop somebody to fill out the proper paperwork.
On your activity report, one of those lines used to be you have 250. So then you had to go in there and put the 5 in there that you did them, and you had to go across the month and count them.
And that's what they did. They created the
disaster. And you know what? Themselves. For data purposes, when I was in the Warren Squad, we enjoyed having that because you were always constantly updating. You can go to the 250s when you're in the squad as well, and you can see, is there a new address on this person? Maybe the next time they got stopped, they didn't want to give their address again, so they gave their girlfriend's address or their grandmother's address. Now we got another address. So we had all these different. It was a good tool. It was a great tool for that.
They also lost the database because of the abuse of stop, question, and frisk, where we had the database of people stopped, which actually was a pretty good database to have.
Just think, as you said just a few minutes ago, is that we had a quota for it. So you knew from the very beginning that the policy would be illegal just by putting it. Right. So why do it? Why do it? And at the end of the day, the working cop in the street is the guy who got the blame.
Well, you use that word, overzealous. They're overzealous.
Bloomberg walked off, Kelly walked off, and they left a bag of shit for the people.
And now they're all they've all got to where they got because or they received all these accolades because of that. And now they're all, after the fact, they're all they're pushing back on it was wrong.
We apologize. We apologize.
Yeah. So,
and like you said, it led to the federal monitor, more power for CCRB, And the regular working street cop now has to deal with this.
And no one's ever apologized to the cop.
No, not to the cop. They've
No one's
apologized to the
apologized to the
neighborhoods
cop on
that
the
they did all the.
Right.
I still don't understand why this girl was thrown under the bus. This sergeant from Staten Island. Now there was those when they were out there enforcing this cigarette tax, and looking to collar people for that. They weren't out. There was a boss with them, wasn't there?
No.
So it was just 4 or 5 guys.
The call for the Gardner case for loose cigarettes, there was a call that came from the chief of department's office
Yeah.
for enforcement of loose cigarettes outside that location, the bodega location. Now, there's all kinds of rumors floating around as to why that call came from the chief of department's office. And, people need to look into this a little deeper, because I'm hearing the ATM machine in there was owned by somebody in headquarters, and that this had an interference in what occurred. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I'm hearing.
Are you allowed to do that? You allowed to own ATM machines?
Well, yeah, you can own an ATM machine, but
I can't own
when
a bar,
I
but
own
I
the
can own the
ATM machine and I
machine?
start sending cops to the location to protect it, it's a whole
Right.
different story. And
That's interesting.
that's something that, if it's true, no one's talked about. And at the end of the day, we have a man dead, a cop fired, and another cop that was used as a political pawn. And the real culprits to the whole scenario have probably walked away scot-free. And that's where I take issue with it.
Well, did that the enforcement came from chief of department's office, but was that through the mayor's office? That those.
I didn't hear that.
But that tax law is a federal law, right? So when you get that money for housing, isn't that included in there? You got
The
to.
tax on the cigarettes?
Yeah.
Yeah, but look, it's not a victimless crime, right? You own a store, I'm selling outside your store, whether I'm peddling socks or whatever it is, you're paying rent, you're paying tax, you're running a business, and I'm undercutting your prices. So you're a victim in that case,
Yes.
okay? And let's be clear, contrary to Gardner being choked and the way it's all been described, he wasn't a choir boy.
Right,
He
no.
resisted arrest.
Well, he already was involved in an incident
Absolutely,
that day.
and he resisted arrest, which no one talks about. But should the world witness somebody die on camera? He didn't technically die on camera. He died, after he came off camera. But it's not. Look, I get it. I get the way everything is seen, and there's still family members and things like that. But the playing field was not balanced.
Right.
And Pantaleo, he took a hit because the Adonis took a hit. Bratton, Banks, all the rest of them skated out the door. O'Neill, they all skated out the door. And, what's the real truth of it? Again,
Well, same thing with Amadou Diallo.
Amadou Diallo.
It was overzealous, grabbing the guns off the street. They flood these commands.
But
and they were-
here's the difference, Mark, is that you're right. We're going for guns. When a cop makes a decision, all right, you blink, that's your decision. But we spend months, weeks, years, and in some cases, the rest of their lives. Kenny Boss was one of those cops in the Diallo case. Kenny was kept on ice for almost 20 years.
Yeah, he
before-
just retired.
He just retired. And he served 2 tours in Iraq, got all kinds of medals. He's jumping out of helicopters, saving people's lives here in the NYPD.
Aviation. He
Broke
was in, right?
both shoulders doing it. Okay. You took an incident that occurred in seconds and convicted people for the rest of their lives on what was a tragic mistake. What people don't see is what we see when it happens, when someone reaches, what happens, how quick it happens, all these things. They don't see that. As we're sitting here now, there are surgeons all over the country operating on people on a table. They cut the wrong artery, you die. It's just an accident.
Right.
Nothing happens to them.
My point was that just the numbers games with the department. Like if you were in street crime back in the day, and you had to bring whatever it was, 4 guns in a month, and listen, this area that we're working in now there's nobody even out anymore, or they're aware that we got to put the guns in, but they still want the 4 guns because you can be replaced.
Well,
You
one
know
of the
what I'm
things
saying?
they
What's
did
the
with street crime back there that was a big mistake was street crime was most effective when there was 100 to 120 guys in the unit. And Safer came up with the idea of if 100 is good, let's put in 400, and they watered it down. That's what I'm trying to
And
say.
street crime used to get the best of the best people. You
Yes.
got real solid cops that were out there, knew how to work the streets, knew what they were looking at in the street, knew how to talk to people. Go back to stop, question, and frisk. When I came in '82, stop, question, and frisk, there was a logbook that if you stopped somebody, you would put
I remember that.
them in a book, okay? By the end of the year, there was probably 12 people in the book for all the stops that occurred in the precinct, okay? And if you were in a book, you probably was somebody that was related to like a lawyer, a doctor, or a DA, somebody that made that book. But for the most part, a cop would stop you, explain to you what was going on, ask you your questions, lead up to a frisk of weapons, and at the end of it, that individual said, "Thank you, officer. Had a nice day."
Right.
So the encounter wasn't really, brutal, is what.
Why we
people
used
would
to say
describe
back then in anti-crime, leave him with a good taste in his mouth.
and they always were.
Right.
They
And that
were.
was a technique to that.
That's right.
that
And
the
you
older
learn from
guys
the
taught us.
seasoned people,
Yeah.
and the seasoned people that were really well seasoned
Right.
ended up going to the street crime
Right.
units and did this on a daily basis.
Instead of, hey, fuck you.
Right.
You don't like it? Take a walk.
And
No.
some people had an eye for guns. Some people would be able to drive around and have an eye for, and if people don't believe that, then that's a whole police
Yeah,
science of
exactly.
people carrying weapons, It's the truth,
Now, how do you go from being a delegate as a sergeant to even thinking about? I mean, there's levels. You don't just run for president, do you? You got to do something. Don't you have to be something else?
No, well, sometimes you can be a member of the board and run, or you can run as a delegate. I ran as a delegate. I got to the
Wow.
point where
That's the hardest way to do it, though.
it is the hardest
And
way
just
to
like
do it.
politicking, because right now the movie The Irishman is here. And we have one of the actors here in studio tonight. What's up today? What's up, Bob?
Everything's good. Thank
It's all good.
Bob,
you watched the,
Bob Mladenich. We'll
Yeah.
give him full credit. Give him his
If
last
you've
name.
seen The Irishman, there's a monstrous,
big, scary,
menacing
big,
guy.
scary-looking guy.
He does the walk from.
The gate.
Yeah. And he's right before the guy's gonna get whacked. And what was in the flower shop, right?
Yeah.
Barbershop.
No, it was a flower shop, wasn't it?
Barbershop.
Oh, was it? Oh, but they had flowers in front of it. Yeah, because they stopped.
He's trying to
you don't
backtrack
actually.
on it.
You don't see what happens. You don't see the hit, but you're just looking at flowers, which is
It was very dramatic.
yeah, it was interesting because you hear the noise in the background. But prior to that, something's up because all of a sudden you see
coming.
this huge dude like leave one room and now he's walking down the hall. He makes eye contact with the two guys that are gonna rub the guy in the barbershop out, and he gives him the wink. Everything's okay, and then he keeps walking. And that's my man Bob here, retired detective. So we got a full house here. We got Andrew here.
We got Michael O'Keefe on deck.
Michael is on deck. And
He's back
Andrew,
there when
the
he was
kid.
talking about getting guns.
We didn't even
He's
mention the
back
kid
there
is
raising
here.
his
Look,
hand.
Mike's got a lot of guns.
for our audience, we have a new engineer, Rashad, but we promised Andrew that if
Try to get him a job.
we'll get him in. Yeah.
Went to the
So
bullpen.
That's
so
right.
unfortunately, Rashad
That's right.
Rashad is sick, and we hope you feel better. He's fighting a bit of the flu, and so we Andrew's here, man. The kid is in. His beard is a little thicker. It's raining buckets outside, so he can't wear his open toe shoes. But he's here with us, man. He's looking good. I just wanted to give you an update of
little
our
history
audience as
behind
well.
the
Yeah.
scenes.
So you ran as a delegate,
Yes,
and was it you won the first time out?
first time out.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you had to go from command to command, or
Every command in the city of New
you're
York.
like half out there.
He hit me
on
with
the
a
rallies,
He gave me a
right?
$50 bill.
There
I
you
didn't know
go.
what it was. When he
How did you?
What's that look like?
Did you have to start? I guess writing speeches and stuff, or pumping the. How do you pump the sergeants up?
You just tell them the truth. You just go place to place and tell them the truth and what you could do better.
But when you were a PBA delegate,
Right.
Yeah, you can go to every single command, and there's going to be hundreds of cops there.
Correct.
When you become a boss, now you're a sergeant, there's going to be less. So you go to every command and you talk to 5 sergeants at a time, or you get them all
Sometimes you
together
go
in one
back.
shot.
Sometimes you get 20 or 25, and sometimes you get 2. But in commands where you get 2, you go back, on a late tour. You go back next week. And
when you
try to-
ran, though, Ed, what was the biggest complaints from the sergeants?
Our benefits had a 30% copay. Our contracts, we had years of zeros. We were just really being
The 30% copay.
on prescription drugs.
On prescription grubs. Drugs. Grubs.
Representation.
We had to pay for food. We wanted
you had,
the SBA to pay for it.
You had now you have one of the best policies, right?
We have
That's
a
what I heard.
0% copay.
How'd you do that?
We just cut out all the fat and
But literally, you had to cut somebody, right?
no. We there's a lot of hanky panky in the drug industry, and we figured it out. And cops by nature are skeptical people.
How many
so
meetings does that take?
I took quite a few.
Yeah.
About 2 or 3
That was the
years worth
greatest
of
story I
meetings,
told before. When I forget the name of the company, but they were like really shady, and you found out they stole $500,000.
Well, we had one company owed us about $750,000.
Wow.
Another company was operating out of a garage with overhead wires hanging from their garage and folding tables. And
this company that you're talking about, this is the one that is going to give you the insurance to pick up your prescription drugs.
as anybody in America would go out with their drug plan, swipe your card, and walk out of the pharmacy with your script. It's the company that
We're talking
would
about a lot
manage
of
all
money
that.
here, right?
Big money. We had one of the
People are fighting for this contract, though, right?
yeah, but you don't get the contract like that. It's
I mean, but these companies that are offering these pharmaceuticals,
they'll offer you everything for a
but
contract.
they want this deal,
They
right?
want it. It's big.
So
big
you
money.
got to pick out which one.
I give you an idea of the type of money it is that it gets floated through. Is in the course of when we first got it, we had about $900,000 in reserve, and that would only last a little bit less than a month, maybe about 3 weeks. Today we're about $32 million in reserve, and we've reduced our drug costs tremendously. And we're paying out millions of dollars a year on top of that, and still saving money as a result of us
Wow, that's amazing.
cutting all the fat. You know?
You said
amazing.
something like the guy wanted to steal $1 million by buying you a $40 bottle of wine.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's
Oh,
a
really?
And
Tell
then
us-
back in the
tell-
day,
tell
certain
us the
union
story.
guys would do that, right? Take me
How
out
does
to
that- how
dinner.
does
It's going to
something
cost $30 million. You know.
It's not so much the steal, but the thought process was that was the game plan. We would just become buddies and not pay attention to what's going on. Is one of the vendors at the time who had the contract walked into the office and like a Wednesday in the rain, wearing his dirty black raincoat, and unannounced, he said, "I want to take you out to dinner and." Sit down, get to know each other, and
Oh, this is when you became
when I first got in, about a
president,
couple
yeah.
months, and I said, I really don't eat much, so I don't do dinners. And he said, no, we'll go out, we'll get the whole board, we'll all go out, and I'll tell you how things run, and we'll have nice, good bottles of wine. And I said, I don't drink much either, and the board doesn't eat. And it just didn't really go anywhere. And he just
Was this
wanted
guy
to
out of the
tell-
picture already, or you just? You
Oh,
didn't
he
wanna-
was a walking dead man. He just didn't know it.
But you
he was
didn't.
still here,
So
but we
no
were
matter
trying-
what he would have done, you already had other plans.
There was, unless he could turn us around and save us millions of dollars, but he wasn't interested in doing that. So
Yeah.
we just got rid of him, as quickly as
And
we
is the drug plan run self?
It's self-administered.
Yeah.
We oversee it. We're pretty critical on everything. We figured out how this game is run.
They must not like you, the drug companies.
But I don't work for them. I work for the members, and
That's
that's
right.
what's important.
That's great.
So as long as the members are happy, that's the bottom line.
It's a powerful position.
And now we can
It's
get
an important
Cialis too.
position.
Yeah, it's
Now we get Cialis.
Yes,
on
you
the
go.
Oh, you guys see Alice?
I was like, what? I opened
You're
up the
good.
magazine. I went, holy shit. No more of that from Cialis from India.
The blue chew. You guys get the blue chew? The blue pill. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
You used to say, no, that's a stimulus program. Right?
stimulus
That was your
program.
joke.
That's it.
I remember back in the day when we said, hey, can you get us that?
Stimulus program.
What else is another big issue that you got to fight for your?
It's always contract, dealing with the politics of.
Why is the New York City system like that, where everybody's separated instead of bargaining together? Why can't the unions get together?
It's about sheep. It's fear.
The fear on whose part? I mean, if
fear in the unions.
the
I mean,
PBA
I sit
and the
with
SBA
unions.
and the
Well,
LBA.
It's different. Pat likes to get in there and throw punches, and he'll take you to arbitration. But for the most part, my feeling is that people want to be liked, and I think they want to be liked because taking a photo with you as the governor or the mayor, or whoever you are, is impressive. But I'd rather take a photo, with a member. Because they want to take a photo.
Well, that's
I'd rather
good.
do that. And
That's good. That's a
your-
good quote
your-
right
Your
there.
feeling is really to be liked by your membership and not worried about who you're supposed to,
Taking
deal with
pictures
above.
with.
It's not important.
So you can
Yeah.
post it on the Instagram.
Yeah, it's not important, and I think that that's a big problem. That I look at some of the deals that occurred in New York City labor. I'm president 18 years, and it's probably over $2 billion in healthcare givebacks that went to the city of New York. And people are working for these things, and yet we're giving it back because the city says they have no money. But we're building skyscrapers and
Right.
throwing money to every program.
Did you go to college?
Yes.
All right, because I was wondering, how do you know all this math and stuff like those?
I know. You have people that do that for you.
So they do and they show you the numbers. You're like, this isn't right, and then that's when you step in and you're like,
Well, you have good people. You get good people that work for you. You can't know everything, so you have people that know their field, and you get good advice, and you make decisions based on good advice.
But isn't it still? It's still tough to negotiate with the city.
It's difficult to negotiate with the city because there's always politics involved, and bargaining with the city. This administration is not cop friendly. Contrary to what they'll tell you, they're not cop friendly.
Right.
Bloomberg did like cops, and he did pay the cops. It was difficult to get money out of them,
But he tried to take our variable supplement.
but a lot of that's political. That's the pushback. Is every time they want to do a deal, they say we're going to take the coverage away from the line of duty widows, and all the cops. And I said, go ahead, take it, let them have it, and see where that goes on your end when we come against you.
Right.
No one's willing to, play Russian roulette.
They don't want to get in the mud. They don't want to get the mud on them.
That, and that's the problem. So. We kind of lost that old labor mentality that everybody sticks together.
yeah, you remind me of that a little bit, like a throwback in a way. That type, because in your position, like you said, I said powerful, but then you said something else.
It's important. The position's
it's
an important position.
But also, too, when you're in those positions, if you're not going to play ball, if you're really looking out for your members, the people that you represent, then you might fall into a problem where all of a sudden you're not everybody's favorite guy anymore.
As far as your members go.
No, I'm talking about outside the members. The members might love you because you're out there fighting.
That's all that matters.
Yeah, but it also too, what happens? What happens is a lot of times, all of a sudden, people that you take the pictures with like this. Instead of your members,
right?
Those guys they don't want to deal with you too much.
Well,
anymore.
they may not, but if that's important to you, then you're going to have a problem. If it's not important to you, and there's plenty of pictures you will take with people who are good people, who are elected officials, who believe in the right thing and do the right thing. It's not everybody that's that way. There are people who support cops and do things for cops, and they'll tell you the truth. And then there's the other people who just play these games. And because you don't want to take them on, you surrender. And I just don't agree with that.
Right, exactly.
Amen.
But you know what it is? I guess the whole point is that you choose who you want to like you, and you choose your membership over these politicians that, you're going to bang. You have to bang heads with them.
It's a simple process. If we can have a respectful, meaningful, working relationship,
Right.
we're good. But if you think I'm going to sell the membership on behalf of that relationship, it's not happening.
For a bottle of wine.
It's not happening. It's just not happening.
For a good bottle of wine.
It's not happening.
Yeah, you don't drink, right?
No.
That's what I heard, right? That's good though. I never mind.
W.C. Field said, "Never trust a man who doesn't drink."
That's right.
Yeah, I don't care, man.
You said a lot of things, don't you?
Especially girls. If the girls don't drink, that don't bother me at all. Sometimes it's a little intimidating. You're like, how am I gonna? But no, if they don't drink, that's fine.
You take them to a nice restaurant.
That means they really
buy
like
them
you.
dinner.
If they really want to go, if they still want to go out with you and they don't have to drink, they probably really like
Then
you.
they made a good decision when they were sober.
Yeah.
Right?
And
That's how you gotta
I'm
look at
saving a bunch of money too.
it. It works.
So where's the SBA going nowadays? What are you guys looking forward to?
We're still going. Well, this platform is going to be built to.
When you say this platform, tell all the audience.
Well, we're building an Inside Blue platform, which is basically for law enforcement to give the message of law enforcement across the nation, to give cops in the street a real voice because they can't speak for themselves on camera. They can't speak for themselves over the radio and identify themselves, but they can speak through us. And we will use Inside Blue as a platform to tell what really occurs in the street, to give the other side of the story, just like we talked about the Kizzy Adonis Gardner case.
So people can get both sides of the story, because right now
They don't always get the full
the
story.
media, if it doesn't fit the narrative, we might not get the whole story.
You
right?
may not get the whole story, and there's somebody out there who becomes a victim as a result of that.
You said that all the time. The media is always saying, "Oh, the perp was unarmed," and you've said before, no, the perp is armed because the cop is armed, and if the perp takes the cop's gun, he's going to use it
What
against
people
the
don't
cop.
realize, and I just went out on Twitter with that recently. I think it was in Chicago. Chicago police officer had a guy up on a car who spit in his face, And this cop grabbed him, body slammed him right down to the ground, and people were like, oh, that was harsh. That was not harsh. That was justifiably deserving of someone who spit in your face to a uniformed cop. Okay, he knows you're a police officer, and he spit in your face. So you're not supposed to call timeout, take out a hanky, wipe your face, and then say, please get in the backseat of the police car. That's just not possible. It's not even option number 75, right? That's not an option. Option number 1 was to flip him right over on the ground, take control of the situation, put him in cuffs, and put him in the back of the car. And that's what the cop did. What takes place if you don't do that, you're now struggling with this guy. You're in a resistant arrest atmosphere. So you can be punched, kicked, bitten, knocked to the ground, and he could even take your gun and shoot you with it. What people don't realize, they say, well, that didn't happen. Of course it didn't happen. You know why? He chose option number 1
was a good cop.
and won the game right away.
Yeah.
But if it escalates, we don't get to pick and choose. This guy's going to go through 3 options. Tomorrow, the next guy's going to do 4, and that's the guy's going to take my gun. We never know where that's going to happen. So we don't go on patrol into the street with the idea is, I go out today to lose. I go out today to get my ass kicked, and let's see what happens.
Well, it's like the fight in the subway, which we spoke about before on here, where one cop hits a kid and knocks him out. To me, I want that guy in my anti-crime team. That guy's a superstar.
But that guy's justifiable in that whole incident.
Yeah.
What's not being told is that, prior to the officer was knocked down, there was this train tracks that are running on both sides, platforms 12 to 15 feet wide, somewhere in that proximity. Anybody can end up on the ground. We don't have the option to go home dead. That's not an option we choose. And, when there's large crowds and things get out of control, you have the ability to use necessary force. And what no one's telling anybody is that the department trains you to do these things.
Exactly.
They give you a stick. They give you a gun. They give you a mace. Okay. They give you physical training. You're allowed to use any one of those combinations of tools to inflict physical injury,
compliance
to the individual you're bringing with you.
Right.
And resistant arrest is not an option. You don't get to choose that I'm not going to go. If I go to arrest you and you don't want to come, then I call for more people.
Right.
And I just continue to call for more people. I need a helicopter, I call for a helicopter. I need emergency service, I get emergency service. You don't get the ability to say, I'm not going. It's not going to happen.
Hey, because so many of these incidents now are being recorded, and you have a public that they're not really aware of these options that you said and things that can go wrong. They're getting, they want to see a fair fight. You're fighting the law. It's not going to be a fair fight. But because a lot of these incidents that happen, I think that there's so much pressure on these cops out there nowadays, especially here in the NYPD, where you're scrutinized and they're dousing you with water and all these different things. Before you know it, our suicide rate jumped up over here. I think I'm not sure.
We had 10 last year.
12.
12.
12 throughout the whole year.
In a variety of ranks too.
Wow.
Yeah, and so you, as the SBA president, you're taking it upon yourself, and you're leading this. You're at the forefront of trying to come up with a program, a suicide program, something that. Well, you explain it.
Well, one of the big problems, and this is nationwide, is that cops nationwide do not trust the departments for help. They just don't. And the end result of, if you went to the department to which you work in for help, they will take your firearm. So let's just take the basic of someone who just got served papers being, they're notified they're going to get divorced. I mean, that's a traumatic experience for either party going through this. But as a police officer now, you're going, to get divorced, you got served. So tensions are high in the house. You got all this going on. Am I going to keep my kids, move out of my house? I got my job. My shift may change. All of this is impacting me. I got to spend all of this extra money for attorneys. I may have to pay for her attorneys or his attorneys based on income. That's a lot happening at one time for someone who then has to go to work and deal with 911 calls, shots fired, sick people, people hanging themselves, all of these things. So a lot of trauma occurring. And you go to the NYPD, in this case, this department, and they'll probably take your guns, right? Not in all cases, but they do.
So you say take your guns.
They remove your firearm from you to give you a duty status change. And the duty status change then puts you in a position where you're not out on patrol. You're not working with your buddies, and
Can't make
you're not
overtime.
going to make overtime,
Right.
which now really impacts your divorce because it's all going to be about money. So we take people who have a problem and we put them in a deeper problem. And what I find, and I'm doing this 38 years, what I find is that they don't trust the department. I talk to cops every day of all different ranks, and including the chiefs. They will tell you cops don't trust the department. They don't trust the department.
Right.
But they do trust the union. That's an important part of this missing puzzle. So we're going to unravel a suicide program. I'll use the word suicide, but basically I'm looking at it more like a life coaching program where that same individual that just got served calls us, tells us, look, I just got served. All right, listen, it's happened to everybody. And we take them through it, help get you a lawyer, follow back up with you in a couple of days. How's it going? You call a lawyer, what's taking place? Keep working this person all the way through the process to try to keep them mentally strong.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a point of crisis, we get them help. And we send them to somebody that they can get help, and we'll deal with the firearm issue. But it's not coming out where they're getting tagged and labeled and transferred.
Didn't the department just start a program, and the first guy that went to it, they took his guns away from him?
That's correct. But people don't trust the program. As we sit here now,
Well, they
people
just
don't
showed that you
trust the
can't
program.
trust
But even
the
before
program.
that,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, we don't trust this program.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have to take your assets, and right now, trust is a big one, and use that toward a bigger picture. And that's where we're going to go with
Well, the taking the firearms it's a unique situation, obviously, because of this job.
Correct.
But it's also the reason why we can kill ourselves so easily, because we have access to a firearm.
Right.
Most people have to think about how they're going to commit suicide. And, just thinking about it, is it going to
Quick.
be a bridge,
Done.
or
Right.
am I going to hang myself, or is it going to be pills? With the gun, it's 2 seconds.
Right.
The first thought in your head.
And you're done.
So, obviously, taking the guns away it might be if the most important thing sometimes in these situations.
It might
It's
be.
the stigma that's attached to getting your guns taken away.
But it's Mark. It's also the assessment. Who's assessing whether this person needs their guns taken away?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the most important part. And part B to that is that does the guns really have to be taken away for 12 months or 13 months?
Well, it's a bigger picture than that, because here's what happens. Let's go back to the scenario of the person in divorce. Trauma, okay? Every one of us as cops, right? You remember your first autopsy?
Yeah.
Where was that?
Right here in the OCME's office on 26th
And
and
you were in the
1st.
academy, right?
Oh, the first trip down there.
Right, but you're watching
Yeah,
autopsy.
yeah.
yeah,
Same,
Academy.
same for me.
I thought that you meant
So
as in the
why is
squad.
it that many, many years later we remember the first autopsy? What'd you do the next day after you had the autopsy?
You mean by thinking about it? I went about my business.
No, the next
but-
day. The next day you went to work. What would you
Yeah.
do? What was your
Yeah.
day like? Remember anything about that day?
No.
How about you?
No, not really.
But we remember the day we went for the autopsy.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because it's a traumatic experience. And traumatic experiences enter into the brain.
Don't ask me questions like that.
And-
You get me nervous. I feel like I'm always going to get the wrong answer.
he
feel like
thought
it
there
just
was a
took-
test and he was going to get a grade.
He thought he had to study.
What's that from Goodfellas? You might fold on the question.
But traumatic experiences embed into the amygdala area of the brain, which controls the emotion. So every incident we've encountered on patrol, fatalities, vehicle accidents, shootings, things of high trauma, we can probably remember those stories at no problem.
We probably compartmentalize those.
We do.
As these little PTSDs.
Correct.
And they build up.
And they build up. And then when it gets to the point of brain injury, it needs to be extracted. So the game plan is to get the people at the point of trauma. So when you got divorced, when you're being served, the key is to coach them through it so that they don't get to that dark place.
How about a maintenance program where you can get involved? Because mental health is, we're not even close
Mental
to.
health is no
We're
different
not
than
even
cardiac
close to
health.
understanding it right now. But what we do are understanding now is that these little PTSD scenarios, they may build up. Okay, they may continue building throughout your whole career, and then one traumatic incident like a divorce or something that happens on the job, you take all those little ones plus this big thing, now you got a major problem on your hands. I'm thinking if there's a maintenance
You're
way, you
100%
can
on
go
target.
through your whole career where
Right.
you might be able to, everybody mandatory has to go
I agree with
to
you.
speak to
Right.
somebody maybe a couple of times a year.
That's what we're working toward.
Yeah. So this way you take the stigma away from going to see a therapist or a clinician,
Right.
because everybody has to do it now. Almost like going to the range. You're going to make sure you can still fire. You're going to make sure
It's
that you
no
still
different
can
than a cardiac
think
checkup.
clearly.
You go and you get your heart checked as a regular
Yeah,
thing. It's the same thing.
So
you get
we
your
would
brain
all
checked.
agree that cops, after a certain amount of time, everyone has PTSD.
Well, here's the scenario I give you. Another test question for you. When you came into this job, did you ever go into a store, a restaurant, anywhere, and prior to coming into this job and say, oh, I need a table facing the door? Did you ever do that?
No.
No.
Okay. Did you ever look in the window of a store before you walked into it? Prior to coming on this job?
No.
No.
You
Okay.
learn those things.
But you learn those things, right? They tell you it's tactics. What it really is hypervigilance. And hypervigilance is one of the signs of PTSD. So it builds up over a period of time. And it's extractable from the brain, but it's extractable through what you're describing. It's maintenance, it's coaching, it's acceptance of, I got calcification in my arteries in the heart. So cut out the butter, cut out the fats, get on a treadmill, things like that. We don't treat the brain because we say they're crazy.
Right,
They're not
right.
crazy. This is what's happening. And we need to address it, particularly in law enforcement, before they get to that point of anxiety, before they get to that point where they're unable to make a decision.
Well, it used to be that whole macho thing that to reach out and
Look,
and get
there's
help,
a lot to
you know,
that. There's
yeah.
a lot that I can't ask for help because I'm a cop. Well, I met with Navy SEALs who come out of theater, they get extracted to Germany, they get debriefed on everything they see, and then they're sent out for like 4 or 5 days, hanging out in Germany, having a good time, or wherever it is that they go, but in places I was told was Germany, and they get put back in with their buddies. Why? Because think about it, and we've all done this. We're in the same squad. You just got served with divorce papers. You're miserable. You get in the car with me, and we're talking about it. Right?
Yeah.
What I'm doing is I'm pure counseling you. I'm listening to you. We're going back and forth. Next day, you happen to be in the car with him, and he's like, "Hey, how's that crazy wife of yours doing?" And we're doing it again.
Right.
But we don't even know we're doing it, and we're all making you're a little short money, so we help you out with money, things like that. That's what we do. Cops do this every day, but we don't even realize we're doing it.
Yeah.
And we just got to remove the stigma, or we got to remove the department, and the
How
department.
about we
needs to
remove the
let us-
wife? Don't get married, guys. The moral of the story is stay far away from marriage, and you'll always be happy. Come back next week when we talk about
That's in the handbook. That's in,
It's fun. That's my training officer told me at my first collar. He said, "Kid, I'm going to give you the 3 secrets to this job. Invest in real estate, don't waste your money on cars, and don't get married." 38 years later, the guy was a genius.
oh, I thought you met the guy that said, take a pension loan every 6 months.
Oh, that
It's
guy
your
was
money.
wrong. I didn't listen to him.
Thank God, right?
I didn't listen to him.
I love that one.
That was a lot of money lost.
What are in regards to the suicide program? I heard the rumors has it that you guys are putting together here in Inside Blue, Inside Blue 360, right?
Yep.
You're putting together, you're coming up with some original programming, something that could possibly help the department.
Yeah. Well, what we're doing is we're doing a documentary on suicide, and talking about real life cases and families and people who attempted it, and getting a real understanding of what's occurring. And the ability for us to do it is there because look, people trust us, and when we're not there to hurt them, we're not there to embarrass them, but we are there to try to help save other people's lives, and they want that also. So the idea is to get the information out there, information like we're talking about, so that people who are listening realize, wait a minute, that this makes sense, and there is somebody that I can get help from. And not when you're in your deepest, darkest moment, which I describe as when anxiety takes you over and you're in a pitch black room with no light under the door or the window, and you just want out, and that's when they grab the firearm. We got to get to people way before that
But
happens.
there is a point where even a union head like you would recommend taking someone's firearms.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, when there's a point, you just have no
Almost
choice.
of no return. Yeah, you
Well,
got
the
to.
idea is to save the life.
Right, exactly. That's the most
but
important
people
thing.
need to be coached and guided to understand that whatever the problem, it's correctable.
Right.
And life gets better just
get
going
help.
through the tough time, and that's what you got to drill that in on a regular basis.
So we're doing a lot of positive things here. We're creating this network to send out positive images and just so the law enforcement and their families can see other sides of the story, positive sides of the story, not just always the negative. We're doing stuff with suicide prevention, and we're going to trying hardest. Are you getting together with the other unions trying to figure out how we can create this program? Are you going about it on your own?
Well, once we're going to put it together first, and then try to get some help from the department.
Ask everybody to jump in.
And then tell people what we're doing. And, my theory is that, people want to do it, not do it. But if you're a cop and you have a problem, whatever your rank, whatever your department, we'll help you.
So a police officer could come to the SBA.
Anybody
And
wants to
ask you for
save
help.
their
Oh, that's
life can
beautiful.
help us. But ultimately, it's about.
And they're not going to want to see that happen, so they're going to take the initiative and
There'd be no
get,
reason
get
not
it.
to.
Yeah, get it for their own.
Right.
Either if it's the PBA or the LBA or the CBA. So what else? What else are we doing with this Inside Blue 360?
Well, we want to get information out. We want to tell stories about cops, even some of the bad stories and why things happen. We want to get that point out of what really occurs. And also we want to be able to give the people, the viewers, the citizens of the city and other
More
cities,
police off the cuff, and a raise.
a chance to
A banner
get
would
the
be
other
nice.
side of the story. You know how long it took me to make that brick wall for you? He said he's got an Italian guy. I'm thinking pizza oven brick.
Yeah, we got to get some sponsors too. Yeah, man, this is great, man. I want to thank you guys for bringing us, Bill and I, in on this on the ground floor of this. And like I told you during our first meeting and our second meeting, I'm here, man. So I'm sure Bill is down with this too, to help you out any way that you can. And I would love to be able to grab a camera and go out there and start, giving adding content to this. This is going to be an app, right?
It'll be
Is that
an
the
app.
goal?
Basically, it'll have its own platform. You can go on
It's
a
going to have a
website, get it.
platform, and you're going to be able to go to the app.
All social media driven.
And you're going to be able to find our podcast, Police Off the Cuff. Bob, you're working on a podcast too, right?
We have some good stuff coming.
And we have a couple of other people that we've had as guests already that I think would be phenomenal, having their own podcast as well. And we might even have one for future writers. Michael could teach a
Future cop writers of America.
a class on that and get it.
Buy the book. There we go. We
The
just named
department really is so diversified, and that's why I love doing this, because I love showing like how much, not only were we cops, but we also had all these outside interests. And lucky enough, if you make it to the end and you grab the money while you can, you'll be able to have a full life and go after all the other things with 100% effort that you were trying to kind of dabble in while you were on the job, like acting for Bill and stand up for us, and writing for Michael, and Bob too, acting, also writing for Bob. So this is a good thing. I think this platform is going to work for all of us.
But Mark, the other thing with us is it's a wonderful thing. I've been out 8 years already to be able to talk and not have to worry about what you say.
Well, that's the benefit of it. That's the key.
That's a
is
beautiful
that cops
thing.
now have a voice without having to have a filter.
Right.
And they get to be in control of what is true and not deal about the ramifications of going back to work.
Yeah, I mean, no offense. There's a lot of police podcasts that are popping up now all of a sudden, but they're all using guys that are still on the job. And the reality is, you're talking a different language. When we sit down here and we talk, we're retired. You know what I'm saying? And we have a little bit more freedom. And freedom is like we're seeing right now in media. Everybody took it for granted, man, for a long time, for many, many years. And now we're watching careers that it took years to build up being destroyed over a tweet. 10 words that should never been put together. And
Well,
then
it depends. If you wanted that career to be destroyed, then it should have been put together.
well, yeah, but also too, nobody has. It's harder to read into something funny when it's in words. Also, if you have a vendetta or a bone to pick with me, you're looking at every single thing that I say, and it just goes to show you how powerful words are. Again, where you could, back in the day, you could say whatever you want to somebody. You know what I'm saying? But now, it seems like.
Well, look, we don't have to put a spin on things. The department has to spin everything. Well, before they
No, you have the
get to
ability.
media.
What you have is the ability to be the voice for the people who can't have a voice. So
Right.
you can get information from the people you know, the people I know, right? And they'll tell us, hey, this is what's really happening. And we become their voice, and they know that we're not giving them up. So what
I think you're
people
gonna
hear
have a
is
voice
true
too, right? You got
information.
a little podcast you're
Yes,
working on,
we're
right?
gonna talk
And
about a lot of
you got a
different
couple of in the bank already, right?
Yep.
Who did you talk to so far?
We just talking about issues and getting out, the conflicts in government, conflicts in the communities of, color communities, people of color, and dealing with the police and what really takes place, and trying to build some bridges to heal some of the, friction is going back and forth.
We got two things coming up. You got the SBA luncheon, right? What date is that?
The 20th.
20th of December,
December 20th. What time does that start?
12.
12 p.m.
Yes.
All right. I think I might be able to stop there.
Because we
for
were
an
supposed to
hour.
have a little booth and
You're gonna
let
have
people
a-
meet us. There's our
Yeah.
10
Well, you
fans.
might have to
Our
just
10
meet.
fans can
If you
meet.
want- If you want to be there,
10,000 fans.
if you want to meet both Bill and I, then come early because I got to split by.
It's got a curfew.
Yeah, it's got a curfew.
No, I have to drive all the way up to. It happens to be another party I have to go to that night, but it's like 3 hours away. So,
Get a better offer.
It's his girlfriend.
Cut his
You
mic.
can't turn it down.
but and besides for that, then we also have the launch in January. Is there a date picked for that? Do we have?
You got to talk to Pam about that.
All right, Pam is the producer.
She's our
She
producer.
got the whole thing going.
Ed, let me ask you one question now, and this is on my mind. And even when you're a retired cop, a lot of this stuff hurts. Is law enforcement in crisis across the nation?
Yes. Law enforcement have become the bad guys nationwide. Recruitment is down, I believe, like 60%, if that was the numbers. Every
Yeah,
department
especially
I
in.
talk to,
I just read it in the paper yesterday. They're having a hard time. Not Seattle, Portland. They're having a hard time getting cops over
Portland's
there.
a city that's under siege, and that's a result of elected officials. We're seeing that in California.
They can't get cops. Everybody's resigning and nobody's taking
Why
a
would you
job.
want to be a cop in Portland? Seattle's another place. The Chicago, they're struggling out there with their mayor, but Chicago FOP and their president Kevin's doing a great job battling back.
How do you get the cops to do the job in a community like Chicago when they're under siege by their politicians and not being
What I
backed
think
up?
is missing in the eye of the public is that cops generally want to do what's right. So when they see a victim, they see an aided, they see a perp, bad guy doing something, they're going to get involved. It's just who we are to say, that's wrong, I'm going to do something about it. And they do it in that aspect of it. You got the 911 calls that come in, so they have no choice, right? Call comes in, you're going to respond. How they manage that when they get there changes things. There's an intimidation factor that's now gone, where the public, and especially the scumbags in the street, are sitting back knowing that they can get in your face with a camera, they can get away with certain things because your tolerance level is different than years ago.
Right.
And that the elected officials will support the scumbag in the street over the cop. What's happening nationwide is that we are catering as a society, based on our elected officials, to 5% of the uprising instead of the other 95% of the good people looking to keep a steady community and a well-balanced community.
Mm-hmm.
We're catering to that squeaky wheel, which is really a minor piece.
Is this from criminal justice reform? Is that part of it?
A lot of it's criminal justice reform because what we see is elected officials trying to get the vote. I mean, where we're going.
Well, I think what's happening is a result of social media. The people that are crying all the time and screaming the loudest are that little small group of people.
Correct.
And all of a sudden, I guess we're just like people that, as a society, we're not used to hearing people complain so loudly so often. We just want to put the fire out so we can go back to our lives. We just keep giving and giving and giving, and before you know it, everything's blowing up in your face.
Well, nothing left to
it's
give.
just ideas too. I went and got that new enhanced license. I needed 6 pieces of ID to get it, and they sent me home because I was missing one.
And your
I was
government
pissed.
ID from NYPD with over 20 years of
Right,
experience, should have
exactly.
been
That
just
wasn't good
sufficient.
enough.
Wasn't good enough.
But yet they're
No.
giving licenses
no
not to
ID.
illegal aliens.
With no ID, nothing.
It's unbelievable.
Right.
Well, we're not going to solve all the world problems here today, Ed. But we sure got
Why
around
did I
to
come on?
hearing.
I thought that's what we were here for.
We sure got around to hearing at least.
What we learned
at
today
least
is
there's
the
a
SBA
plan.
pays for Cialis.
At least there's a plan, and at least there are still good leaders out there that are helping, that are trying to do the right thing. And I feel good with you in charge, with you being my new boss right now, I'll be honest with you. And I think we had a great time. I think we want to have you back again, but I know you're a busy man. You probably got a plane to catch.
No, I'm afraid of heights.
We had to put him on first because we were afraid he's going to get that call and run out the door. You know,
he's elusive. We've been trying to get you for a while, Ed. He keeps
Trap me in here between the two of you.
Real life has a way of getting in the way. But I want to thank you guys for coming on and taking some time to sit down with us, Ed, and for taking, having some foresight and seeing that we're onto something here. And we look forward to doing some good work for you and getting this word out, and with the network, with our show, and really doing some good things out there.
And you are, and I'm happy you're doing it because cops need it, and you guys are getting a good little following going.
All right,
So
thanks for doing your thing, man.
right?
Thanks for coming in here. Keep up the good
I just
work.
want to say one thing. I was a sergeant for 22 years. And when I say that, people say, why was he so dumb he couldn't pass the lieutenant's test? But I was a sergeant for 22 years. And for a big part of that, Ed was the SBA president. And I don't think there's a better union head in New York City. I think his heart is in the right place, which is the most important thing. He's honest as hell. That's really important. And he's out for his membership, not for that expensive bottle of wine from that guy with the dirty overcoat. And so,
Thanks,
raincoat,
Bill.
yeah, the dirty raincoat. All right, on behalf of Police Off the Cuff, I just want to say thanks once again, Ed, and we'll be back with another hour. We got Michael O'Keefe coming in, and stay tuned, man.
end the tour.
End the tour.